Class 7th. Subject: Social Science. Lesson 4. Ocean. There is unequal distribution of water and land on the Earth. The 2/3 of the Earth's surface is covered by saline water. It means that the 71% of the total area is covered by water and remaining 299 is only land area of the Earth. The great water regions are called oceans. Small water bodies are called seas. It means a huge water body is called ocean, and sea are the limited portion of the water. Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal. 2 seas in Indian Ocean. There are 4 oceans on the Earth: the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, the Indian Ocean, and the Arctic Ocean. All these oceans are interconnected. Water of oceans mix with each other. The following is the areas under these oceans. Oceans. Areas. In square kilometers. Pacific Ocean. 16.6. Atlantic Ocean. 8.2. Indian Ocean. 7.3. Arctic Ocean. 1.3. Pacific Ocean is the largest and deepest ocean. It is so deep that world's highest peak, Mount Everest, can be dipped in this ocean. The Atlantic Ocean is almost half the size of Pacific Ocean. The name of the Indian Ocean is named after our country India. India being a subcontinent and the ocean is in the south of India, the name of ocean is derived from the nation. The smallest ocean is the Arctic Ocean, the Iceland. It remains frozen throughout the year because it is in the extreme north of the Earth around Arctic Circle. Around the South Pole lies the Antarctic Ocean, which is counted more as a continent. The oceanic water is always saline because large quantity of mineral salt is dissolved in it. Fresh and saline water. The water on the Earth's surface is found in the form of rivers, canals, lakes, seas, and oceans. Several mineral salts get dissolved in natural water and make it saline. These minerals are very useful for the growth of living beings, plants, and trees. The water bodies get water from the different sources like rainfall and melting of snow, etc. And flowing through the rivers it reaches to the plants and other living beings. This water is fresh water. Some of the water that seeps in the earth gets filtered in the process and is used for domestic purposes by extracting out of earth by means of tube wells and hand pumps. Fresh water. The water we get from rainfall, melting of ice, rivers, canals, tube wells, etc. is fresh water. The water on the earth evaporates due to the heat of the sun. The stagnant water of lakes, landlocked water bodies, seas, and oceans gets evaporated continuously, and as a result, the amount of salt increase in this water. This is the reason the common salt making is quite popular occupation along the banks of seas. The amount of salt remains more in oceans because of the carbonate consumed by fish and marine organism. The saline water. The water of lakes, landlocked seas, and open oceans is saline. The highest salinity is in the Dead Sea. This sea is landlocked. The seas which have high rate of salinity do not let things and even human beings drown. How wonderful it is. By standing near the bank of the ocean we can observe that the water in the oceans is always moving lower. It is never calm and still. Lee's movement is its life. Ocean waters move in the form of ripples, waves, tides, and tsunami. By the wholesome movement of water, the waters of oceans mix with each other. There are 3 types of movements of water: waves, ocean currents, tides. Waves. The water of oceans always ripples with the winds over the ocean surface. According to the change in weather, these ripples are high and sometimes these are low. At times the movement is faster and at times it is comparatively slow depending upon the waves arise in the ocean. The ripples or waves arise due to the speed of the wind blowing over the surface of oceans. The water vapors run up and down with which the water start rippling. As shown in design 6.2, upper surface of wave is called crest and the lower surface of wave, or when the water returns almost to its original position, is trough. When a cyclone occurs, these ocean waves turn into horrible water splashes. Sometimes they even destroy ships sailing in the oceans. The waves erode the coastal areas and transport the rock material to the ocean floors. Ocean currents. When the ocean water moves in a particular direction, it is called ocean current. The water in the ocean moves very systematically from one place to the other. Due to these ocean currents, the waters of all oceans mix up with each other. The speed of current can be slow or fast. Usually their speed is 2 km to 10 km per hour. The ocean currents are of two types. 1. Warm water currents. 2. Cold water currents. If a current flows from the equator, it carries warm effect along with, but if a current flows from polar Rs, it carries cold effect. In this way, warm water currents and cold water currents come into existence. The currents going away from the equator are always warm, and coming towards equator are always cold. It should always be kept in mind that water of warm current is slightly warmer than the water in adjoining areas. Similarly, the water of cold currents is a little bit colder than that of water of nearby areas. The warm water current always flows on the upper layer of the ocean, whereas the cold water current flows underneath. Why these currents move? Who gives the form of stream to the ocean water? Answer to these questions is with the planetary winds that blow in a particular direction throughout the year. The trade winds and westerlies, while moving in the same direction throughout the year, carry with them the ocean water along with. Therefore, ocean water also moves in the direction of the planetary winds. The insolation of the sun is not uniform on the whole of the globe. The temperature remains high throughout the year in equatorial regions, but as we move away towards the poles, the temperature starts decreasing due to the difference of the temperature and direction of winds. Ocean currents originate as warm water which is lighter and flows on the upper surface near the equatorial region. The water from the cold areas replaces it and thus starts movement of oceanic waters. Besides, the prevailing planetary winds and the difference of temperature, salinity of water is also a cause of origin of ocean currents. As all the oceans do not have same quantity of salt, the oceans with higher amount of salt have heavy water and ocean with lesser amount of salt have light water. Thus these two types of water came into existence. The lighter water comes up the surface, whereas the heavier water tries to flow down the surface of water. Thus the movements of ocean currents originate. These ocean currents move along the coasts of the continents. Therefore, the shape of the continents also give them directions. The rotation of the Earth also affects the speed of these currents. Ocean currents of Atlantic Ocean. Look into the circulation of Atlantic Ocean current. You will see that there are two specific circles, one in the north of equator and other in the south of equator. North Atlantic Oceanic Circle. The trade winds blow in equatorial regions. These winds always blow from east direction. Along with the water of ocean in north and south of equator starts moving in the same direction, east to west. The equatorial warm water current flows from Africa to America. It appears to flows along the eastern coast of North America to the northwest of North America. Here this is called as Gulf Stream. The Gulf Stream starting from Gulf of Mexico to the islands of Newfoundland. This is the most important warm water current of the world. Its width is 400 km. Its water flows with a speed of 5 km per hour. Its warm effect affects the climate of the eastern coast of United States of America. After reaching near the islands of Newfoundland, a cold water current named as Labrador mixes with it. Due to the mixing of warm and cold water current, a dense fog is formed over there. The glacier moving from the poles melt after reaching near the Gulf Stream. In this way they do not create obstruction to ships after reaching down. A cold water current from Greenland also mixes with it. Now this current under the effect of westerlies moves eastward. Now it is called by the name North Atlantic Current. This warm water currents, while flowing across northwest of Britain, reaches the cold areas of Norway and Sweden. Due to the warm effect of this current, the fishermen of Norway go away for fishing. It is also due to the warm effect of this current, the ports of European countries remain open even in winter season. If this current does not flow to this area, the ports would have been frozen. From the Europe, Canary current flows to the southward. It is a cold water current which passes over the northwest coast of Africa. This current, by mixing with the equatorial current, completes the cycle. In this way, this cycle is in a clockwise direction. The area enclosed by this cycle is called as Sargasso Sea. B. Southern Atlantic cycle, a definite cycle of ocean current similar to northern cycle, is also in this side. This cycle flows in an anticlockwise direction. The southern equatorial current, when advances towards the east to west, then it strikes against the elongated part of the North America and is divided into two parts. One of the part joins with northern cycle, but the other part flowing along with the coast of America and advances to the south. This is called as Brazilian current. A cold water current from the south comes to mix up with it. This is called as Falkland current. Now this current under the influence of westerlies. It is called west wind drift. This is a cold water current, which circulates around the whole of the globe. The reason being, from the southward there is an open ocean, therefore there is no obstruction in between. A cold water current of South Africa flows northwardly along the western coast. This is called Benguela current. In between the North Equatorial Ocean current and Southern Equatorial, there is a counter-equatorial current that flows from the west to the east. Pacific Ocean currents. These ocean currents also have two types of cycles: the northern cycle and southern cycle. A. The northern cycle, under the influence of trade winds along the equatorial line, a current flows from east to west, is an equatorial ocean current. After reaching near the eastern archipelago, this is called by Kuroshio current. This is also called Japan current. A cold water, Kamchatka current from the north to the south and merges with Kuroshio current. All this oceany drainage proceeds towards the east. This is called North Pacific Ocean current. After striking against the western coast of North America, it turns southward. It is called as California current. As it comes from polar area, it is cold water current. The southern cycle, the southern equatorial current, under the influence of trade winds, proceeds from South America to the east of the Australia. This eastern Australian current, when approaches to the island of New Zealand, merges with west wind drift. Near South America, one branch of this proceeds northward. Here it is called as current of Peru. This is also called Humboldt current. This is cold water current. This, along with equatorial current, completes its cycle. Counter-equatorial current also flow in Pacific Ocean. Currents of Indian Ocean. The Indian Ocean currents are not so systematic and permanent as the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean. The main reason of this is the seasonal winds that flow in Indian Ocean. These winds blow southwest direction in summer season and northeastern direction in winter season. Due to this change, the ocean currents also change their direction. In this southern hemisphere, the currents are more permanent. The equatorial warm water from the eastern archipelago proceeds towards the eastern coast of Africa. Along this coast, this current goes to southward. Here it is called Mozambique current. A branch of this flows from the east of Malagast. This is known as Aguilar's current. These two currents, along with west wind drift, proceed toward the east from the west coast of Australia. The Western Australian cold current, after proceeding northward, merges with equatorial currents. Effects of currents on climate. You have studied that there are two types of ocean currents: warm water currents and cold water currents. These currents flow along the continents and coastal areas. These currents affect the climate of the adjoining land. The warm current raised the temperature of the places adjoining them, and the colder current lowered down the temperature of the adjoining area. When the warm current passes over the surface of water, these absorb enough humidity, and when they approaches to the coastal areas, these rain heavily. But when a cold currents pass over the water surface, it becomes more colder and dry. When it approaches to the coastal areas, then it increases the coldness and dryness. Wherever in the world the cold currents flow, their adjoining areas have been converted into the deserts. Find out the name of these deserts. The place where the cold and warm current merges together they produce dense fog over there. For example, the cold water current of Labrador and warm water current of Gulf merges at the east coast of the North America near Newfoundland to produce dense fog over there. In the design of ocean currents, find out the places where the warm water current and cold water current merges. Besides climate, these currents also affect the oceanic shipping. The shipping is always in the direction of the currents, with this their speed increase, and thus less fuel is consumed. The warm water current melts the glacier. In this way they do not create hindrance to ships. 3. Tides. The people living near the ocean observe that water rises and falls 2 times a day systematically. In the coastal areas, water continuously rises for some hours. After reaching a definite height, it starts falling down. This rise and fall of water repeats 2 times in 24 hours. The alternate rise and fall of water in oceans is called tides. When the water rises, it is high tide, and when it falls, it is low tide. There are huge oceans on the Earth's surface. When the moon affects the oceans by its gravitational pull, the water rises high towards the moon. According to the geographers and the scientists, the main cause of tide is the gravitational force of moon. Although the sun also pulls water, but it is from a too long distance and it cannot make rise in ocean water. But if the pull of moon joins with sun, then rise of water will be very high. The height of the tide is not always the same. Sometimes it is more than average and sometimes it is less than average. When the tide is maximum, that is called spring tide. When the water rises less than average, it is neap tide. Spring tide. During the spring tide, the rise of water is maximum. This happens during no moon day and full moon day. The reason of this is that in both the phases of the sun, the moon, and the earth all are in a line. In this phase, the sun and the moon both pull the ocean water jointly. Due to their joint pull, the rise of water is very high, which is called as spring tide. Neap tide. In the neap tide, the rise of water is lower than as usual. It is on the 7th and 21st day, or the first or the last quarter phase of the moon. In this phase, the moon, earth, and sun are right angles to that of the moon. The sun pulls water to its side and the moon pulls towards itself. Due to a nearness of the moon, the water rises towards moon only. But it is not as high, because the pull of sun is working on the opposite direction. Man and tides help us in many ways. Due to the tide, the deposits of soil and the debris against the mouth of the river washed away. Thus the soil do not get deposited on the harbors situated on the coastal areas, and ships can sail up to a great distance inside. The big ships standing in the deep distant seas keep on waiting for the high amplitude when there is rise in water that sail into the harbors. After downloading the ships, cargo again wait for the rise, that they move again to the seas. The port of Kolkata on the banks of Hooghly River is away from Bay of Bengal. If there were no tide in ocean, the ships could have not even reached in Kolkata harbour. Similarly, the port of London is situated at the banks of Thames River. The ships also move in and out of the harbour when tide rise in the ocean. Now it has been planned to utilise the energy of tides to fulfil the ever-increasing demand of energy world over. 4. Tsunami. Tsunami is pronounced as tsunami. It is a Japanese word, made up of 2 parts, zu meaning coastal and nomi means a long wave of water. The tsunami means long waves of water striking to the coastal areas. The long waves arise due to the earthquake on the ocean floors. This is not only a single wave but a series of waves, better known as wave train. It comes one after the other. Sometimes these are so intense that the water along the coast of ocean moves with a speed of 800 km per hour. At some places the water rises up to 100 feet and flows with highest speed. In coastal areas there is a great loss to man, animals, and property. As things are washed away with tsunami,